All right, as we carry on, I want to mention two things. First, it's not great, but I did my J, and I sent it to you. So if you want to look at that, you can. I called it first initial 2, so first initial console 2, so it won't interfere with any of yours. The other thing I wanted to show you, though, and I don't think anybody in here knows this, although I could be wrong. First of all, am I right in assuming the three of you know how to unzip a folder? Okay. Well, what I'm saying is you're going to get folders that are zipped. So they're going to look like they're inside of something. They'll have the zip on there. So they're going to look, can you see this? It looks like it's wrapped up, so to speak. And you may or may not, depending on your machine, have a built-in unzip package. The easiest way to tell is to just right mouse click on there, and hopefully you'll have something that says extract all. That'll open it. If that doesn't work, if you don't have that, you can go out and just literally Google free unzip package, and there are a bunch of them out there. All right, I'm not going to recommend one because some of them are good and some of them are not that good. All right, but okay, most machines have something built in for that. The other thing I want to show you, and if everybody would please look at this, because I didn't show you this before. So this is the second one that I just built, first initial console 2. Okay, so that's it right there. Now, I can go in and start up Visual Studio, not a problem. And if I've already been working on it, like I have been, under the Open Recent, there it is. Everybody see that? So I can click on that, it opens it. Not a problem. You all understand that. I at least believe you do. But what you may or may not know is I can also double click on the file name, first initial console 2, and there is a file in there that's got the name .sln. That means it's a solution file. I can also open up Visual Studio by double clicking on that file. So you can do it either way. You know, you'll probably establish a comfort level doing things one way or doing things another. One of the things over time, especially since I've been here, that I don't do as much as I used to, if there's 6 ways of doing something, I don't know if I'm benefiting you by showing you all 6. So I usually pick the 1 or the 2 that I consider to be the most intuitive, and I'll show it to you. And sometimes people come up, hey, did you know you can do this? Usually, I mean, sometimes, no, I didn't know that. Great, thanks for telling me. But a lot of times, I already knew that. I just didn't want to add further complexity, especially when we're just starting. All right, so yeah, there might be another way of doing it, but you'll notice after I double-clicked on it, there it is. All right, so either one of those ways will work just fine. All right? Yes. All right. And do your ranking accounts. Yeah. Okay, well, I think I can help you with that during the next break, okay? We'll see. The other thing, too, is I want to get out of here now. I can just click the X. That's pretty harsh. If you know you've made changes to your program, you're not sure if you saved or not, you always should either click the double disk icon here, which does a save all, or do a file save all, or if you really like it, Control plus Shift plus S. I don't ever use that, but you can. But what I want you to understand, you remember if you look up on the screen, because I showed you this yesterday, there are files in here that you didn't touch that the system wrote to. So it's always recommended that you do a file save all, because not only does that save your files, it will also save any system files that were created and could have possibly been changed. All right. Sometimes if you don't do that, what happens is when you try to close, and you should really always close by, I'm going to just right now do a file, and I'm going to say close solution. If you look on the screen here, when I say close solution, that'll keep Visual Studio running. If I do a file exit, it'll close the project, and it'll close Visual Studio. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to close my solution here, and what you'll see is, boom, so I'm back there. All right. And again, sometimes when I say this, you might look at me like I've got a screw loose. And Of course I got that. I knew that. Okay. But I don't want to take anything for granted. All right? I don't know the level of computer expertise that any of the three of you have. I've got a better idea with these two, having had them last semester. But I still think even probably with you two, occasionally I'll say something, geez, I didn't know that. Or occasionally one of you will tell me something, and I didn't know that. All right? I'm not afraid to admit it. If you show me a way, gee, I didn't know that. Great. You know, it makes it easier for me. Okay. So, again, I'm going to come down now. We're going to do number 3. Everybody with me? We're going to at least do 3 and 4, and we should be able to do 1 or both and then take another break. Okay? Then I'll ask you after that, hey, you want to stop for the day? And if you do, that's fine. We'll work on these then tomorrow. Okay? Either way, it's fine. Or we can go on and do 5 and 6. Either way. All right?
So to get back to that,
if you've got a project open right now, just click File on your menu way in the upper left corner and choose Close Solution. Again, usually before you do that, you'll always want to first do a File Save All. All right? Yes. Yes. Everybody's different. Microsoft is trying to be all things to all people in many ways. And that's a good thing. It really is. I'm not ripping on them for that. But they try to give you usually 3 ways of doing something. There's a command from a menu. There's a picture or an icon. And then there's a keyboard combination. Okay, what you find is a lot of times old people like me do it one way. Younger people like you probably do it another way. All right? I mean, my kids, when they use any software, they'll look for an icon right away. They don't want to have to do anything with the words. But, you know, I've said this before, and sometimes people laugh. Again, not meant to be funny. But a lot of times I watch students. I just bought the book. What's the first thing they do? Why are they doing that? They want to see how many pictures are in it. Because they know that every time there are pictures, that's one less page they have to read. And I'm not going to lie, I do the same thing. All right? Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to create yet another new project. All right? And again, look on the screen, please. You may have this here now. Okay? And that's the kind we're going to create. After we create this one, we're going to recreate it as a GUI. And that'll be the first GUI one that we'll do this class. When we do that, if yours doesn't look like mine, you want to use different colors, different this, different fonts. I'm going to show you all that stuff. Do it. What I really don't think, to me, looks good, for example, there's cursive fonts. I don't use cursive fonts on programs. Sometimes if younger people, they don't know how to, you know, and if you don't know this in school today, a lot of schools aren't even teaching cursive anymore to their kids. You won't need that. I think that's wrong, but you know what? I ain't God, so I don't make the rules. Okay? Because I've heard young kids, I've never signed anything in my life. Wow, that's scary. They just click a button which puts an electronic signature in there for them. And I don't know if you've been following world events, but if you have, I watched this thing last night, and I'll admit it, I'm a Democrat. So you can probably guess what I think of our president. That said, he's our president. Okay? He's our president. But one of the things I was watching MSNBC last night, and they had a general on there who actually used to be a big Trump supporter. He got on there and he said, what he did killing that guy was maybe the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life. He said, was the guy terrible? Yes. Did he deserve to be taken out? Yes. But how are they going to come back? He said, my guess, they've got a lot better techie people there than we have here. Oh, that's what he said. He said, we know that. They've already broken into the subway system in New York and the water system in New York. They could go and they could pollute all of the water in this country and kill us all. They could do that.
Yeah, I was watching a video the other day on a whole, different viewpoints of a lot of information on the guy that got killed.
Yeah, I mean, and they're thinking it's going to be a cyber attack. The other thing that they can do, and they mentioned there was some millionaire, I can't remember who it was, but I know he's a Democratic guy, that they went in before and took a bunch of his accounts and a bunch of his information. They just removed it. It was just gone. So you could go in there to use your ATM, and any instance of you ever even being there could be gone. That's scary as heck. All right. So I'm going to come in here, and I am choosing console app.NET Framework with that chosen either here or over here. I'm just click Create New Project. Yeah. And then, like I said, if you've got this here on the left where it says console app, and no, please stop me. If I want to make sure you're where I am. If you fall behind, then you stop me. All right, so we did a Create New Project. If you've already got the console app.NET Framework here, click it. If you don't, you can always come into the search bar and type console app in here and find it. Make sure the one that you're clicking is C# and it's .NET Framework. Everybody heard that, correct? Don't choose .NET Core and don't choose VB right here or F#. Don't do that because you'll be building it in the wrong language or on the wrong platform. Because there are a lot of people who are moving to .NET Core, which is the newer way of doing things. But yes, C# or VB .NET Core. All right. Eventually, probably the .NET Framework may go away, and it may be replaced with this. But there are places out there that have millions of lines of code. They want to make sure they provide everything for them as long as they can.
So most people use C#.
Well, most people who, C# is one of the more popular languages around. All right? The average salary for a C# developer, not walking right out of Rankin Technical College, but it's about 115 grand a year. All right? It's up there with Java, which is around the same thing. All right. So I did that. I'm going to go to next. It comes up like this. The next one we're supposed to build is called inches to centimeters console, all one word, capitalize the I in inches, the T in 2, the C in centimeters, and the C in console. You say I can't read that, then just take it off your sheet. All right, it's on there as well. Again, I notice how it changed mine here, where I'm saving it. See this? But now when I click my down arrow, and you should be able to also, it's got where you saved the last one. So for me, it was the desktop. I'm guessing that's the same for you, and if it's not, all right, save it where you save it. All right? So again, you can see how mine is set up. Hopefully yours is set up in a similar manner. All right, and just click Create. This one, believe it or not, is going to go a lot faster than the last one because we're not dinking around. I have to hit a tab here, no, a space here. We're not going to do that. All right. The first thing I'd recommend, again, doing is coming down to the bottom here, typing in using static system.console. I recommend doing that for every single console program you do. When we get done, we're going to rebuild this as a GUI app. I'd recommend not putting that in there because we're not going to use it. All right? Everybody has it? Using static system.console? All right. So then come down here. First thing we're going to do is something we have not looked at yet. We are going to create a constant. So I'm putting a comment in there by putting in 2 forward slashes. Right next to my shift key in the bottom right, // and I'm going to say create constant. If you did it right, so to speak, if you did it right, you'll notice that it's green. Now, what if I wanted this to be over 5 lines? Like create, I just had a bunch of stuff. I can put this in there 5 times. I can do that. Or if I've got a constant or a comment that's going to be multiple lines, I can start it with a /*, hit enter, and end my last line with a */. See that? That's a multi-line comment. There's one other kind of comment that you can create in here, and that starts with 3 of these. It's called an XML comment. We're not going to talk about those. But the reason I'm telling you is sometimes people say, wait a minute, I got a question here. I put in my slashes and it's gray. It's not green. It's because you put 3 of them in. It's a different kind of comment. that you can use. We're not going to go through that. We may later if the book does, but we may not even talk about that. So I'm going to create a constant. What do you mean to create a constant? Well, there are 2.54 centimeters in an inch. I know that because I copied that out of that book and then put it on what you have. Okay? So if I want to say that something is a constant, I'm going to type it in a minute, but please just stop what you're doing and listen for a second. I don't care if you look up or not. When you create a constant in C#, you use the word const. C-O-N-S-T. It's short for constant. It's all lowercase. So we're going to say const, and then since this has a decimal in it, we're going to say double, and we're going to call this centimeters in an inch. Okay? When you create a constant, you don't have to do this, but it's an unwritten convention. The constants are in uppercase. Every letter in there is in uppercase. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say const double centimeters in an inch, and I'm going to set it equal to 2.54. You can do the same. Now when you do this, again, it's green underneath here because we haven't used it yet. If I put my mouse there, it's going to say, hey, you created a constant that's never used. We're going to use it in just a minute. So the first thing we want to do is we want to ask the user how many inches. All right, how many inches do you want to convert? Now, when we did a read line, when we did a read line, we just did this. Remember that? Okay, but I'm not sure. Is there just a read? I'm not sure. We're going to find out if this works. All right, I wouldn't type it in yet. So, okay, how? Maybe it does need the word line there. Read line. Okay. How many? We'll look at it in just a second. I'll fix this. How many inches to convert? All right. Let me fix it before you type it in. So what's wrong with this? Generate program. No. Using static system.console. There's write and write line. There's read. Why is it giving me an error? No overload that takes an argument. Oh, okay, this should be a write line. I'm wrong. Okay, now, please, before you even type it in, please look up on the screen here. Now I'll put in a read line. I'm going to explain, but I'd rather show you and then explain it. All right, so what should happen when this runs is I should get a message on the screen that says, how many inches do you want to convert? Come on. There it is. See that? But problem is, I don't want to input on the next line like that. See that? I want to input on the line I'm on. So I want the cursor to stop here so I can put that there. Does that make sense? Why? Because it just looks a little nicer. That's all. All right. So instead of using a write line, I'm going to use a write. So what's the difference? Write writes to the screen. Read waits for you to enter something. Okay? So it says here, how many inches do you want to convert? I put a colon and a blank space in there. Okay? So I want to be able to read that value in. The problem is if I type in there 7, it's not the number 7, it's the string 7. You say, well, what's the difference? A string has no arithmetic value. The address of this place is 755 Par Road. Take the Par Road away. Most people would say 755 or something like that, but it's not really a number. Does that make sense? That's the same thing that happens when you read in a value. All right, so what I'm going to come in and do in here is after my constant, I'm going to come in and I'm going to create a variable. All right, and I'm just going to call it, no, it's not a constant, so I'm going to say double centimeters. You can call it whatever you want. If you want to call it cent, you can do that. And I'm just going to set it equal to 0.0 to start with. I get the same error. It's not an error, the same warning that says, you got this variable you're not using. We're going to use it in just a minute. All right? Now, with what we're about to do, you can do this in more than one way. Did you hear what I said? What we're about to do, you can do in more than one way. So, I'm going to try this. I think this is the right way. I'm going to come in and say centimeters equals convert dot to double read line. Okay, what does this mean? You know, I like the fact you're so inquisitive. Seriously, I really do. I'd rather have 100 questions in a class period than none. Always. Nothing else, it's shown me somebody's listening. All right? Because sometimes when people don't ask, I'm not sure. You know, sometimes I look over and I look at the faces and they're like, just, you got the God take me look. You know, it's like, I want to be anywhere but here right now. And I get it. Believe it or not, there's times, I can't speak for Mr. Growherring there, but there's times even as an instructor, I feel that way. God take me, I don't want to be here. All right? Doesn't happen often, but it happens occasionally. So what this means, just so you know, this is going to write on the screen. How many inches do you want to convert? Followed by a blank space. This line right here is going to take whatever value I put in there. It's going to attempt to convert it to a number, whatever value I put in there, and assign it to centimeters. Now, this program will break if I put something, if I leave it blank or put something non-numeric in. We're going to learn in the future how to fix that. It's just I can't teach you everything at once. You might even be that good, but I'm not. It would just involve keep putting these, you know, we're going to put pieces in eventually. So what we should have when we get done with this is centimeters should have a value, whatever value we read in. All right? Now, okay, that's fine and dandy. Okay? So how many, so this is how many inches to convert. Hey, guess what? Look what I did. Yeah, I created a variable. Let's create two variables. You're right. So let's create two variables. One, that'll be inches. Now, look on the screen, because this bugs some people. I'm a little anal about this stuff, I admit it. I like all this to line up, but watch what happens. I'm going to say equals 0.0, and watch what happens when I, see that? So you've got to manually go in after that, if that bothers you, and do that. Then it'll work. Yes?
I didn't bring my charger.
Do I have an extra charger? No, just the one I have in here. And I can, like I said, I can run you off a hard copy if you need it.
Yeah.
Okay? So, you've got this. Now look at, I'm using centimeters. Do you see how that one is does not have the green underline anymore? See that? Well, that's wrong. I'm asking how many inches do you want to convert. That is where I should have inches. Okay? Centimeters, which we're going to do now, is equal to inches times what? Somebody tell me. What do I put after this? It's on the screen. Yeah, but we don't call it 2.54. What do we call it? Centimeters in an inch. That's why you use a constant. Centimeters. Why? What doesn't it like here?
Would it really matter if it equals 2.54?
Okay, the question is, it would work just fine if you put 2.54 there. But imagine you had a program you were writing for the IRS, okay? And in this program, you've got tax rates all over the place. You call it tax rate, okay? And literally you got it in hundreds of places in the program. And let's just assume the tax rate is 32%. So you create a constant, okay? All right. Now the tax rate changes from 32% to 33%. You only have to change this from 32 to 33 and recompile. In every place you use the constant, it automatically changes its value for you. That's why you use constants. Plus, it makes the program a little bit more self-documenting. All right. So now I've got values for inches and for centimeters. All right. So I want to do one more right line here. And this right line will say exactly what it said we should say in here. So we want to say 3 inches is 7.62 centimeters. You with me? We want it to say something like that. Now, we don't want to do this. 3 inches is 7.62 centimeters. You don't want to do that because that's not always going to be the answer. That would be silly, say stupid, but it would be. All right, we don't want to do that. What we could say here is inches. That's the name of our variable. Give some room here. I could say here inches plus inches is plus centimeters plus centimeters. And this will probably work, just so you know. I'm not sure, but I'm going to put a read line in here afterwards, and I'm going to run it. And I'll come right back to the program, I promise. But I'm going to run this. So, how many inches do you want to convert? 3. 3 inches is 7.62 centimeters. See how that worked? Worked just fine. Right answer. Not the recommended way of doing it. All right, I'm going to show you what the recommended way of doing it is right now. What we're doing here is we're mixing apples and oranges. And what I mean is we're putting a double and a string and a double and a string. It works. All right, but there's no guarantee that that will work in every programming language there is to do that. So I'm actually going to put this on 2 different lines just so you can see it, because otherwise I'll run out of room. Instead of saying inches, I'm going to say inches dot to string, which means convert it back to a string because I'm going to write it on the screen. See what I'm saying? It doesn't change my value. It makes a copy of it, and it converts that copy into a string. All right? So I'm going to do the same thing here. Dot to string. All right, so let me make this a little smaller. This right there is virtually the entire program. All right. And again, since Christian doesn't have his charger here, you don't by any chance, Chad, have an extra universal charger, do you?
No, I have no.
Oh. Okay.
If I had an HP laptop, I would try that.
Okay, well, thank you anyway. So let's run through this line by line, okay? And starting from the top here, what have we done? We added using static system.console, which again, for lack of better words, it provides a shortcut for us. If we don't have that at all, we still have this line in here that says using system. But you have to say console.readline or console.writeline. If we remove both this line right there, the system line, and this line, then we'd have to say system.console.readline or system.console.writeline. So in virtually every console program that I create, I put in that line. Yes. All right. Then in our program, let's take it from the top. All right, you'll notice this. It says 0 references, etc. You don't type that in. Those are system messages. This here and this here. And you always say, well, I don't even have those. Don't worry about it. Yesterday, we're using a different editor in the afternoon, and it puts some of this stuff in. I forgot to tell the students that it puts it in for them automatically. They were typing that stuff, and their programs weren't working. So don't think, if you did that, don't think you'd be the only one. Okay? So we come in here, class program, which it calls it by default. Here's our main. First thing we did, because this is the first time we've seen this, we've created a constant. A constant, what that means is, in this language, all right, when you create a constant, you must initialize it. You must give it a value. I can't do this. Because I made a constant, but the constant doesn't have a value. If I put my mouse here, it's basically a const field requires a value to be provided. Well, I'll do it later. No, you'll do it now. In some languages, they let you put a value in later. Not this one. So, again, making it all capitalized like this is more or less an unwritten standard in virtually any language. Because people can look at it, since it's in all caps, and say, I can't change that. That's why you do it. Yes? The double means that that value can have a decimal place in it. If we made it an int or an int32, it would have to be a whole number. All right? And we don't necessarily, since it already has a decimal place in it, we could have made inches and int. We could have done that. But then you couldn't put in like 7.3. Now you can, if you want to. All right? So again, it's a constant. It's of type double, meaning it can hold a decimal place. And this is the name of our constant. So this right here, that is declaring a constant. This part right here is initializing that constant. It's actually a two-pronged process. Now, just so you see this, I want to make sure you get what I mean. Look down here. Don't change yours. But here's where we have our variables. I could have done this. And now I don't get an error. Because in line 18, I am declaring a variable. In line 19, I'm initializing it. You might say, well, that's dumb. Why would you want to do it over 2 lines? What if I'm creating something and I want to ask, for example, how many students are in the class? So it might be later on in the program that I find out what that value should be. So you can, when you create a variable, you can either declare it on one line and initialize it on the other line, or you can both declare it and initialize it on the same line. Does all that make sense? So which one is better? Again, I always say this. It's like saying, which of your kids do you like more? It's whatever one you're comfortable with. All right, and as somebody with 3 daughters, it's the one that's doing what I want them to do at the time. That's the one I like the most. All right. I'm actually very blessed that we have 3 kids. They're all daughters. They're all adopted. My middle daughter is from Colombia, South America, and she is convinced that since she looks different, that Dad treats her better than he treats anybody else, because she's the most special to Dad. As long as she wants to feel that way, I'm not going to tell her that. Okay? All right. So after we create the double variable that's inches, we create another double variable that we're calling centimeters. These names, inches, centimeters in an inch, those are all user-defined names. We could have called that X, Y, and Z. The program would have been much harder to figure out what's going on, but it would have worked just fine. Does that make sense? I will expect you to use names that make sense. Again, if you said, well, I'm just going to call it C-meters or cent, that would actually be okay. All right, if anything, maybe that's a little, I know this is long, but again, your litmus test should be this. I could show this to my wife, who thinks because she can operate an iPad, she's a computer expert, all right? And she would tell, and can she figure out what's happening in here? She would not probably know that that's multiplication without me telling her. She might, I don't know. But if you can show somebody that is not familiar with what you're doing, and you make your program enough self-documenting that they can understand it, you're doing a good job. And I will tell you, I put a few variables in here. I put a little bit of comments in here. These people have probably heard this before, but I was teaching, and I left teaching to go back into industry, and I worked for an aerospace company for a year. They gave me a project to work on. I was at this company for a week and knew I made a mistake. I didn't want to be there, but I stayed there for a year. Okay, the reason I'm telling you this is the first program they wanted me to work on, I had to go through literally hundreds of pages of bills that this company had, dig out their ones for Caterpillar Tractor, who was one of their clients, dig out the things for 2 different products. So it was a lot of stuff. The point is, I wrote about 8,000 lines. Now, 4,000 of those lines were comments. I did whole program runs, captured them, and put them in there so people could see what you did and how you did it. Why did I do that? Because after I left, I didn't want anybody calling me and asking me, how do you do this? Why do you do this? I didn't want that. And the guy who took over for me, Mark Wilson, I said, Mark, do you have any questions? He started laughing. He said, how can I have questions? Anything I could think of, you already put in here. That's why I did it. I have never had anybody who has said to me, you know, this is a really good program, but I wish you wouldn't have put so many comments in it. Why did you use good variable names? You know, people just don't do stuff like that. Now that said, I've had people do this. No joke. And I circle it with a red pen and wrote, no it isn't. You wrote on it. That's a little bit ridiculous. What you're going to notice when we get into maybe the next chapter or the one after that, what you're going to notice is if you want to add 1 to a variable, all right, so if I want to add 1 to inches, I'm going to remove this right away, so don't put this in. I can say either plus plus inches, or I can say inches plus plus. You can do that. All right, that'll make more sense in a little bit. But the point is, I've had people put that on a line and put a comment next to it that says add 1 to inches. Why? If you know what plus plus means, you already know that's what's happening. So the litmus test is if you have to ask the question, you probably need a comment there. All right, and if it makes enough sense, you don't. Now, could I put a comment here that says convert that to a, yeah, but what am I calling? I'm calling a routine called convert to double. So probably that would make sense. Are there enough in here? Are there enough comments? Again, that's always up to you as a developer. All right? Okay. The other thing, too, is if I put a comment on virtually every line or every other line, we're never going to get done with this. We'll have really well-commented programs, but we'll write very few. Okay? Are there any questions about anything that's in there? If you have them, please ask. All right? What I'll do is I'll just run off a hard copy of this one. I'll run off a hard copy and give each person in here a hard copy. All right? So that said then, I'm going to do one more file, save all. All right? Then I'm going to do a file, and I'm going to close my solution. Okay? And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to create one more project. This time I don't want it to be a console. All right? I want it to be a Windows Forms app. All right, so what can I do? If yours isn't showing here like mine is, I can come up into my search bar and type in Windows Forms. And again, look on the screen here. We don't want to choose .NET Core. We want to choose the one that says .NET Framework, and we want it to say C#. That pound sign is always read as sharp, so you know that. Okay, so I want this one. Does that make sense? That's how you basically choose the fact that you're going to be setting up a forms project. Again, when you take your first test next week, you will do one program that you'll do as a console and one that you'll do as a forms. All right? So I've got that. I made sure it wasn't the .NET Core. It was the one that says .NET Framework. I click Next. That looks familiar to us by now. And this one is going to be called Inches to Centimeters GUI. Again, the question was asked yesterday. GUI, Graphical User Interface. All right? And even though the name is very similar to the other one, they're different. All right? One was Inches to Centimeters Console. This is Inches to Centimeters GUI. All right? It's now, remember where I saved my last one? It's going to save it there. You may have to change yours. Again, you should be able to click the down arrow if you want to do that. And I'm going to click Create. And what you'll notice are a few things here. First of all, we get a bunch of files shown here that we didn't see before. Also, look, we did this yesterday. Remember I showed you this button right here? It's called the push pin. I can click on it and it goes away. I can bring up my toolbar, click it again, and it stays in place. Now if I make this wider, see what happens to my form? All right. I don't like it any wider than it has to be. That's plenty wide. So now we're going to create the same thing we just did, but we're going to do it as a GUI app. All right. So I'm going to draw it out here. I'm going to type in here. This will say inches. This will say centimeters. I will have a text box here. I will have a text box there. This one will be read-only. All right, and when I put 3 in here, we'll even center it. This, and we'll center this one too, will say 7.62. We'll have a button here that says Calculate. We'll have a button here that says Clear. We'll have a button here that says Exit. Okay? How did I know that? I just made that up. I mean, if Keegan says, you know what, I like the exit button way on the left, then put it there. To me, it makes sense to do it in this order. You may not agree with us. All right? So, label, label, text box, read-only text box, button, button, button. Does that make sense? Anything in there that doesn't make sense? So, I'm going to draw it on the screen, then I'm going to erase this. This is probably a lot wider than I need it to be, so I'm going to make it more narrow. I can always change it later if I want to. And it's probably too tall right now, so I'm going to make it about like that. If I want to make it bigger or smaller, of course, I can always do that. So I'm going to come in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a label. Now, yesterday I did it like this. I held down on the left mouse button, dragged it over, boom, there's a label. Today I'm going to double click to show you. When you double click, it puts it in the upper left-hand corner. If that doesn't bother you, use the one you like. It really doesn't matter. I just have learned over time, I like to drag and then drop it. Again, if you don't agree with that, then don't do that. So there's my first label. Here will be my second label. Again, notice I've got the blue lines there to line them up. All right. Next, I'm going to put in my 2 text boxes. So I'm going to go down here and find text box. And I'm going to drag that one over. Why it's doing that, but it is. And I'm going to put that one in here, and I'm going to drag that one over. Again, remember this. Look on the screen, please. If I want to change the size of these 2, I can grab the first one. If I want to, I can go all the way up. Look on the screen, please. I can find auto size, double click and make it, but I want to change them both. So I'm going to click my left mouse button, drag, and this is called lassoing controls. Lasso just these 2. Now notice I have auto size. I can click here or I could double click on it. But see now how I can change the size? All right. I don't know why it's doing that. I've never seen it do stuff like this before, but it is. So now I can make this wider. If I want to, I can make it a little taller. And I can do the same kind of thing here. Or I could have done them both at once. really and truly, in the end, doesn't matter very much. All right? So I've got that. What else do I need? I need my 3 buttons. So I'm going to go back up to the top here, and I will bring in a button. Why I did that, but it did. Let's try it again. Bring in a button. Object reference is set to an instance of an object. Why? Well, I don't know. Let's try to double click on the button and see if that brings it up there. Okay, there's one button. Now I'm just going to do something different. Control C, Control V. So I copied it. There's my second button. Control V again. There's my third button. So there's my interface. It looks similar to what you see that I hand drew. Still is a little big. So I'm going to make this, a little bit. That looks good. And that looks good. Again, I'm just eyeballing it. It's not perfect. It's, in my opinion at least, it's definitely acceptable in the way it looks. So now I can get rid of this. And I'm going to start filling the stuff in. There's really not very much code we have to put in here. There really isn't. So I'm going to shoot to try to get done by 11. So the rest of the period you'll have to work on what you can work on this or whatever you want to. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do here, the order in which you do these doesn't matter. First thing is, well, I don't like what that says. I want it to say inches and the other one centimeters. But before I even do that, I'm going to change the name. I'm going to call this one label inches with a capital I, and I'm going to call this one label centimeters. Oops, that's the text. Okay, so now I've changed those names. Just so you see this, and I can make this bigger or narrower, but watch this. Okay, now I see where this says properties. I'm going to click this down arrow, and it shows me everything that I've got on the screen right now. And I can jump, if I want to jump that way, I can click on anything, and it'll push me right to it. Okay, not that that's that big a thing one way or the other. Now, well, this says label inches, so I did that wrong. That's supposed to be the name, not the text that's there. So I wanted that to be label inches. Now I'm going to go to the text for this, and I'm going to type in inches. And I'm going to go to the text for this, and I'm going to type in centimeters. All right, everybody with me? 2 things though. First thing, there's way too much space in there. I don't like that. That's just me. And I don't like the font. It's hard for me to read. So I'm going to lasso this, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to where it says text align. See this? And it says top left. This is one of the things Microsoft does that I don't like. Notice if I click here, it gives me pictures. I don't particularly like that. I want it to be centered, but I want it to be centered to the right. What does that mean? I'm going to click this one. See what it did? I like the way that looks already. I think it looks better. All right. And I'm going to, again, lasso both of these to make sure I've got them both. And I'm going to come over here where it says font. Okay. And it says it's a sans serif font that's 8.25 points. What does that mean? It's just the sizing of it. You probably have seen something that looks like this before. I'm going to go and choose, I like Arial. All right. And I'm going to make it bold. And I'm going to make it 12 points. And click OK. Now to me it's rounding into shape. It looks nicer. You may or may not agree with that. All right. And I'm pretty much done now with my labels. So now I'm going to come over to my text box. I don't put any text in, but I don't want to call it text box 1. I want to call it text box inches. And my next one will be called text box centimeters. I don't have to name these the same thing as my labels, but I do it like that. It's easier for me to know what goes with what when I do that. All right? Again, that's just the way I am. Now that I'm looking at it, I want these to be moved up a little bit. I'm just eyeballing this. And then I can make this a little smaller. Yeah, I like that. All right, so my next one, this button is going to be called, the name will be button calculate. Calculate. And the text on it will be calculate. All right, the next one will be button clear, and the text on it will be clear. Finally, the last one will be button exit, and the text on it will be, here's a surprise, exit. Now, one more thing. Please look on the screen here. I find those hard to read, so I want to make my buttons bigger. Now, watch what happens when I do this. Instead of making them bigger, I'm just going to lasso all of them. I'm going to go over to my font, and I'm going to do just what I did before. I'm going to choose Arial. I can never get up to the top. And I'm going to choose bold. And I'm going to choose 12 points. But watch what happens. That doesn't look very good. All right, I want my buttons to remain the same size. So I'm going to lasso all of them. And I'm going to drag this out so it's a little bigger. And I'm going to make it a little wider. See what I did? You can do them individually, but doing it in the way I just showed you is going to guarantee that they keep the same size. Just so you know, let's just say this one got screwed up. I don't know how. It wasn't me. Gremlins came and did it, okay? I could always go back to this, and I can look in here, and I can see the size. It says that it is 99 pixels and 30 pixels. Then I could come back to this one and make sure the size was the same way. So there's a lot of ways that you can resize and do these things. All right? So now that I'm looking in here, did I miss anything? Yep, I didn't rename my form. So I'm going to rename my form from Form 1 to Form Inches to Centimeters. All right, now I'm going to look again, and did I miss? No, all that stuff is now named. But there's one thing, may not sound like a big thing. When I run this, these are still going to be 8 points, and these are 12. You understand what I'm saying? They're going to be smaller. So I'm going to make these both a little bit bigger. I'm going to lasso that. And oh, I thought let's see, is there an auto size on here too? I didn't think there was. Wow. They've changed this since I looked at it last. Okay, I think what I might have to do is lasso it like that and then come in here, and there is a thing that is called Multiline, and I'll set that to true. Now I should be able to come in here and change the size. See that? I don't like that I got to do it like that. And what I should have done, let's see, there's size here just to show you. That was 9122. Let's do the same thing with the other one. So make that 9122. Well, I screwed up. 9122. Try it again. Don't know why that's not working, but it's not working. Size. Text box. Good. 9122. Don't know why it's not working, but it's not. So let's just manually do it. It's fine. Again, I'm eyeballing. They may not be exactly the same. That's not a big thing. Okay? But what I do want to do now is come in here and say two things. First, I want to set the font so it's like the other ones. Well, it looks like it is. Arial 12, that's good. But the other thing I want to do is my text, I want to align it in the center. So now it'll be centered on the screen. I just like, to me it looks more professional. All right? Two more things and then we're ready to start putting in code. Number one, I don't like that background color. That gray to me is really ugly. So I'm going to click on the form and I'm going to go down to back color, click there, click on custom. Let's try a yellow. Okay? You don't like it, choose whatever color you want. Now that I've got these, okay, first I don't like that it says Form 1, so I'm going to change my text from Form 1 to, I don't know, inches to centimeters form project. You know, it can be called anything. It doesn't matter. And then finally, I'm going to go and lasso all of my controls, all of them, right mouse click, and choose lock controls. Now they can't move. Okay? Remember this from yesterday? I'm clicking on the form and I'm going down to start position, and I'm going to choose on here center screen. So there's no code in here yet, but that doesn't look too bad. It's not perfect. And now I'm looking at it, this looks a little bigger than this, a little longer, maybe not, but this looks wider than this, so I'll have to change that. I can worry about doing that later. All right, I just want to get something up and running here. I said I was going to try to do it by 11. That's going to be tough, but we'll do our best. All right, so here's our calculate. That's where that code will go. Here is our clear. That's where that code will go. Here is our exit. That's where that code will go. All right, I gave you this kind of stuff yesterday, but for our button, we want to clear both our text boxes. So text box inches dot text equals double quote, text box centimeters dot text equals double quote, text box inches dot focus. And I'll give you the code. All right, so let's see if that one works. I can come in here and type in something. Notice it's centered. All right, and clear. Oh, doesn't look like it put the cursor back there. Maybe it didn't. It's not even showing me a cursor. It's not good, but we'll have to look at that in a couple minutes. So I've got that one done. All right. Yesterday I stole that code and I didn't find it, even though I told you I would. So what did we say? We said dialog result. Is that what it was? Dialog equals new message box. You may remember this from yesterday, you may not. Exit. Do you really want to exit? Okay. Then we're going to say, I like to put this in caps, exit program now. Message box buttons will have yes, no. And finally, message box icon, this will just be a question. All right, so that's that. Okay, so it doesn't like the word message box there, so there's something wrong with that. You know what? I'm going to just do this. If message box dot show, maybe that was what the problem was the first time. I don't know. Show. Okay, it doesn't want the show on there. Message box dot darn it. All right, something's wrong in there. We'll fix it in just a minute. All right. So if dialog equal yes. Again, that might be wrong too. I don't remember. Because two equal signs is equality, where one equal sign is assignment. So application dot exit. All right, so we got to fix these. All right. I did this yesterday. I should remember, but I don't know where my mind is right now. But how to, there you go, how to close a GUI program using a message box. I went and looked at this one in front of you yesterday.
How can I take it even further and profit with JavaScript? Of course, I'll teach you how to master JavaScript and...
Hello guys, welcome on.
That's it. That's what I need. It is show, so I don't, oh, I know what it is then. Let's see. Dialog result. Dialog result, dialog equals, maybe we don't need new there. I don't know. Well, message box dot show. fix that. If dialog, whoops, if dialog equals dialog result, that's what I want. Yes. Okay, there we go. Now, if you look on the screen, please, I'm going to save this. Now my exit should be working. If you really want to exit, if I say no, I stay there. If I say yes, I'm going. All right? Again, I'll give you all the code for this in just a minute. I'm trying to get this done as kind of quickly. You don't have to do this, but it pretty much, for lack of better words, it's kind of convention that if you create constants, you create them at the top of the program in a forms program. It's just convention. So like we did before, I'm going to say const double centimeters in an inch equals 2.54, just like we had before. All right, my variables, I only need them here. So I'm going to say double inches equals 0.0, double centimeters equals 0.0. You already saw that from the last program. All right, and I'm going to say inches equals convert dot to double text box inches dot text. Again, I just want you to realize something. I'm not doing any validation right now. I can break the program. We learn validation in a later chapter. All right? So, centimeters equals inches times, does this look familiar? Because it's the same thing we just did. Now I want to say, go into that text box for centimeters and put in there, all right, put in there my inches equals inches, I'm sorry, not inches, equals centimeters dot toString. And when I do my toString, I want it to be to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to put in here F2, which means floating point basically, but to 2 decimal places. Let's see if it works. Three. Okay. I can clear. Again, I don't understand why I don't know if this, what the problem is, and my exit works. What I want to get across to you is we use basically the same code in both. What differed is in the first time we had to use read lines and write lines, and in the second we had to use our text boxes. All right. One thing I wanted to change in here, 2 I guess, I want to unlock this. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to lock it again or make sure it's locked. All right. The other thing, there was one other thing. Let me run it again and double check. Okay, well now you can see my cursor. Okay, so 3 and run. Boom. Clear, exit, all works. What did we do yesterday that we haven't done? We clicked over here. I went up to accept button and I set that to my calculate. Then I went down to cancel button and I set that to my clear. Finally, I did a view. View what? Let's see. Tab order. Let's set the tab order. That'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One last thing I want to do. Okay, I got to do another view tab order to make the numbers go away. I want to click on here and I want that to be read only. So I'm going to read only. Whoops, not there. And I'm setting that to true. I don't like the gray. I just don't like it. There's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to come back up to my background color, and I'm going to make it just one shade darker yellow than my regular background is. I like the way that looks. Now that's the way I do things. That doesn't mean you have to do them that way. So I'm going to save this, run this, and take a look. 3, now I can hit enter. There we go. I can hit escape. There we go. Okay, the problem you'll have is if I put in a number that's too big, you won't be able to see all of it in the box. So I can make the box bigger, or I could make constants. But the one thing that I don't like about this, the way it currently looks, I don't like the fact that, you know, it takes negative numbers. So I'd probably change that. I'd probably have a minimum and a maximum. What we're going to do, not now, but in a couple weeks, we're going to have like a 7-part project we're going to create as a class. We're going to create an entire payroll system in C#. And as we start to do that, we'll have constants for things like the maximum amount you can make per hour, the minimum you can make per hour, the maximum you can work per week, the minimum, etc. Because that just makes sense. You know, if it's a weekly payroll, you shouldn't be able to set it up so that somebody works 164 hours or 8 hours. That doesn't make sense. So we'll probably set up like max hours to be 84. All right, where you're on an assembly line, you work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I don't think anybody would work more than that. I know when I started out as a programmer, when we had projects that were due, we worked 80-hour weeks. We did. And the bad thing is we were all salaried, so we didn't get any more money for doing it. Now, at Rankin, when you teach 3 classes in a year, it's considered a full-time schedule. I've got 2 in fall and 2 in spring. So they give me more money. I have to sign another contract for my 4th class. When the vice president was made president, he kind of hinted, I might do away with that policy. Well, there's a lot of campuses where they have programs like this one where there's 1 teacher. And they said, if you're only going to pay me for 3, I'm only teaching 3. Yeah. And they're like, hire somebody else or don't run it. And one guy basically told him that. So he kind of backed off of that. And I don't mean to say anything bad about him. You know, he's got to do what he can to save money. He's a great guy, too. He really and truly is. We're very blessed here in many ways, not to sound too hokey, but the guy who was our president, Stan Schoen, he actually lives in Tennessee, and I mean way on the end of Tennessee, 10 hours away. He works 2 weeks a month here. He does a lot of external things, money raising and stuff, and the rest of the time he's at home. From what I heard, I'd trade salaries with him in a heartbeat. All right. And our former executive vice president, Don Pohl, is now our president. He's a great guy. I've never seen guys like Stan and Don that I can go in and just talk to them. When I've worked at places and I've had people I report to, you make an appointment. Stan, the first day, after I got hired here, they made me go to the St. Louis campus, so I knew my way around and I had to meet certain people. And so one of them was Stan. And I went over to meet him, and his secretary, Pat, said he's busy, he's on the phone. And, and I heard him, who is that? And she told him, and he goes, I got to call you back. He said, come in. He talked to me for a half an hour. You don't meet people who make, $250,000 or more a year that talk to you like that typically. And Don, one of the first times I met him, he said, Jeff, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, we got stadium seats for the Cardinals game next week. You're more than welcome to come.
Was Don at Simons Day?
He could have been. He's probably shorter than I am. He's got, definitely everybody's skinnier than I am. But he wears glasses, and he's got his hair is going a little bit on top, but he's got darker hair. He's, like I said, he's just a terrific guy. But I usually, you guys should call him Mr. Pohl. I'm still, he told me once to call him Don because I was calling him Mr. Pohl. All right. Just great guys. Questions on this? Again, what I'm going to do right now then is I'm going to grab my code. And you'll notice again, I do have line numbers. You may or may not have had line numbers on yours. I don't know. All right. But what, 50 lines of code. And out of those 50 lines, remember I don't need these that are gray, so I can come up here sooner or later when I click, and I can tell it to remove any that I don't need. Okay, now I'm down to 47 lines of code. And out of those 47, out of these lines, I only put in one, so that's, about 30 lines of code right there. All right. Now, as you guess, the more you do this, right, I'm going to print off in a different editor because this print's kind of ugly. But the more you do this, the longer your programs are going to be. Okay. So when we start putting in more logic and we start validating whatever, your programs will get longer. That should make sense to everybody. All right. So let me run this. Not from there. Tell you what, I don't want to run it off on that printer, but I will anyway. I'll just run it off on our office printer. That's fine. Mr. Grow-Herring, if you have time in a few minutes before your class, anytime, you can show me again how to add a printer because Charles had me remove that one yesterday.
Okay.
You fixed it, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to add it back because that one does need a new cartridge.
Yeah.
So
Yep, no problem.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I will prove to you throughout your 2 years here, I am not a hardware person. Usually when it's hardware, I run the other way or try to find one of these gentlemen who really know what the heck they're doing.
I'm not programming.
Well, Ryan, when he was here, Ryan Schaefer-Cotter, we always had this disagreement. He doesn't consider this IT.
Oh,
He said, no, you're programming. Yeah, you're in your own world.
oh.
He said, IT is what we do. And I'm like, okay.
I thought I do pretty broad myself.
Well, what I told him, basically,